They told him to shoot the apple, and she's yours. The crowd watched breathless as Rowan raised his bow, her life balanced on the edge of an arrow, her freedom hanging by a thread. But in that heartbeat before release, his heart whispered a truth louder than any tradition. Love was never meant to be claimed like a prize, and in choosing not to shoot, he shattered an ancient law and rewrote the meaning of love forever. Shot the apple and she's yours, they said, but his heart changed everything. The words echoed through the mountain air like a haunting drumbeat, heavy with expectation and tradition. The crowd gathered in a perfect circle, eyes sharp, voices hushed, breath held in suspense. Rowan stood at the center, bow in hand, his pulse racing against the rhythm of fate. Before him stood Ilara, her dark hair flowing in the evening breeze, a single red apple balanced on her head, gleaming under the torchlight like a cruel promise. The ancient rite demanded precision and obedience. Strike the apple clean through and claim her as your own. Miss and she dies. Refuse and you are cast out in disgrace. But Rowan's heart was no longer bound by the laws of men. He looked at Ilara not as a prize to be won, but as a soul, wild, untamed, radiant with dreams far beyond this valley. He had seen it in her eyes on quiet nights by the river, when she spoke of stars beyond the peaks and lands beyond the forest. She had never wished to belong to anyone. She wanted to belong to herself, and though the village saw her as a symbol of the right, he saw her as a living flame, not meant to be captured. The voices around him grew louder, chanting his name, urging him to shoot, to prove his courage, to earn his claim. The elders watched from the stone platform, their faces carved in stern lines of tradition. Rowan's fingers trembled as they touched the string. He could end it all with one shot, win the respect of his people, gain the woman they said was his reward. Yet every instinct within him screamed that this was wrong. He remembered his father's words, spoken years ago before the old man's death. The greatest strength a man can show is to choose kindness when the world demands power. Rowan had never understood those words fully until this moment. To take the shot would make him strong in their eyes, but weak in his soul. To refuse would make him an outcast, but free in his heart. Ilara's eyes met his, wide and glistening, filled with fear but also trust. She knew him. She knew he would not let harm come to her. And in that gaze, Rowan found his answer. Slowly he lowered his bow. A gasp swept through the crowd like a storm. Murmurs rose into angry shouts. "A coward!" someone yelled. "You dishonor the right," another bellowed. The elders stepped forward, their robes rustling like dry leaves. "You defy the sacred law," one of them thundered. "The trial is not yours to refuse. Shoot or be banished." Rowan's voice trembled but held firm as he spoke. "I will not claim what is not mine. I will not take her life or her freedom. This right is a chain, and I will not forge it." The crowd fell silent, stunned by his defiance. Never before had anyone dared to reject the challenge. The elders' faces darkened, fury burning in their eyes. "Then you are no longer one of us," they declared. "You will leave this valley and never return." "So be it," Rowan thought. He turned to Ilara, who stepped forward, her hands shaking as she removed the apple from her head. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, "You chose my freedom over your honor." Rowan met her gaze, voice quiet. "Your freedom is your honor. Mine too." That night, under a sky filled with restless stars, Rowan left the village. Ilara followed, her footsteps steady beside his. Together they walked into the wilderness, carrying nothing but their courage and the fragile spark of something deeper than tradition, something real. Their journey was not easy. They faced hunger in the forests, storms that battered their bodies, and nights cold enough to test their resolve. There were moments when doubt gnawed at Rowan's heart. Had he doomed them both for a dream? But each morning when he saw Ilara awaken beneath the dawn light, her eyes bright and unbroken, he knew the truth. He had not lost anything. He had gained everything that mattered. They built a home by a river that whispered songs of freedom. Together they hunted, gathered, and learned to live by their own rules. In their solitude, love blossomed, not as a bond of possession, but as a quiet vow of respect. Ilara was still her own, and so was he. Yet they chose every day to walk beside one another. Years passed. Tales of the defiant hunter and the free woman spread across the valleys. Some called them fools, others called them heroes. And slowly whispers began to rise among the younger villagers. Questions about the right, about love, about choice. The old traditions began to falter as new voices spoke of compassion and freedom. When Rowan and Ilara returned many years later, the village had changed. The elders were gone, replaced by leaders who had grown up hearing their story. The rite was no more. The square where Ilara once stood bound by custom now rang with laughter and play. Rowan walked through the familiar paths, his heart heavy with memories. He had left as an outcast, but returned as a symbol. The people greeted them with awe, not judgment. Children ran to hear their story, and the villagers spoke of a new way where love was not proven by a vow, but by the courage to set another free. Ilara stood in the square gazing at the sky, her eyes filled with peace. She turned to Rowan and said softly, "They once told you to shoot the apple and claim me, but you gave me back my life. You gave me choice." Rowan took her hand, rough and weathered from years of survival, and felt the warmth of everything they had endured. He looked at her not as something won, but as a companion chosen by the heart. And though the world had once demanded a single act to prove his worth, it was his refusal that became his greatest victory. Because love, he had learned, is not forged in conquest or obedience. It is born in understanding, in respect, in the courage to see another's soul and let it soar. And though the apple was never struck, its lesson would echo for generations. The moment when a man laid down his weapon and chose the higher truth of his heart. Rowan's decision to lower his bow did not come from a moment of weakness, but from the quiet strength that had been building in his heart for years. Long before that fateful night in the village square, he had felt the growing ache of traditions that crushed rather than uplifted, rules that measured courage by blood rather than compassion. He had seen too many eyes filled with tears disguised as pride, too many hearts bound by customs that left no room for choice. And as the villagers chanted his name, demanding obedience, he felt the weight of generations pressing on his shoulders. But deep within him, a voice whispered that true strength lay not in bending to old laws, but in breaking them when they chained the spirit. The mountain village had always prized honor above all. Boys were raised to follow the rites, to fight for what they wanted, to claim love like a trophy. Rowan had once believed in those teachings. As a child, he had dreamed of standing in the square, bow in hand, proving his worth. But then came the day he met Ilara. She wasn't like the others. While many accepted the customs in silence, she spoke of the world beyond the valley, of rivers that led to endless plains, of stars that promised a life free of command and claim. In her eyes burned a wild hope, and it lit something in Rowan he had never known before. He began to see the world through her longing, began to question the meaning of strength, of love, of belonging when the day of the right came. It felt like a cruel joke. The very woman who had opened his heart to freedom was now placed as a target for his ambition. The law said she would be his if he struck true, but Rowan's heart rebelled. He could not aim an arrow at her, not even to save her, because in that act he would become the same as those who had always treated love as conquest. He knew that if he took the shot, even if he won, he would lose something far greater, his soul's integrity, the truth of what he now believed love should be as he stood in the center of the circle. The voices around him turned to a storm. "Do it, Rowan," they shouted. "Prove your manhood." But their words felt hollow, like echoes of an age that had already passed. He remembered the laughter he had shared with Ilara under the moonlight, the way she spoke of wanting to choose her own destiny, the way she refused to bow to fear. And he realized then that if love was real, it could not be built upon her submission. It had to be born from freedom, from the choice to stay, not the rule to belong. Lowering the bow was like tearing away a mask he had worn all his life. The gasp from the crowd struck him like arrows, but he did not flinch. His voice trembled as he spoke, yet his words carried the weight of truth. "I will not claim her," he said, his eyes fixed on Ilara. "I will not make her mine through fear." The elders' faces hardened. They called him a coward, a traitor to tradition. But Rowan felt something rise within him, an unshakable peace, the clarity that comes when one finally chooses the path of the heart over the noise of the world. Ilara stepped forward, her breath unsteady. In her gaze he saw both gratitude and sorrow. She knew what his defiance would cost him. To refuse the right meant exile. He would lose his home, his name, his people. Yet Rowan's choice had already been made long before the ceremony began. He had chosen humanity over heritage, love over law. As the elders announced his banishment, the crowd split, Some jeered, others fell silent, their eyes betraying the stirrings of doubt. For the first time, they had seen someone defy the old ways, not out of fear, but out of love. That night, Rowan walked away from the village, carrying nothing but his bow and the fire of conviction in his chest. To his surprise, footsteps followed. Ilara, wrapped in a cloak of midnight, came to his side. She had been given her freedom, and with it she chose her own path. And that path led her to walk beside the man who had given her the right to choose. They said nothing as they journeyed through the dark forest, their silence filled with understanding. No promises were spoken, no vows exchanged. They needed none. Their bond was forged in the quiet courage of a shared truth. Life beyond the valley was harsh. They faced nights when hunger clawed at their bellies, days when storms tore at their shelter. They stumbled, they struggled, they bled. But each trial strengthened them, not as master and prize, but as equals walking through the unknown together. In every hardship, Rowan found a strange joy, a peace born from knowing that their love was pure, unforced, and freely given. He had lost a home, but gained a purpose. He had lost a title, but found his soul. Time softened the pain of exile. They built a small cottage near a river, its song a constant reminder of life's flow and freedom. Together they hunted, gathered, and laughed under the open sky. Some nights as the stars shimmered above them, Ilara would speak of the world still waiting beyond the horizon, and Rowan would smile, content in the knowledge that wherever she chose to go, it would be her choice alone. And if the day came when she wished to walk another road, he would let her. For love that binds is not love at all. It is possession. And possession is a cage years past, and whispers of their story traveled across the mountains. Villagers began to question the old ways. The tale of the man who refused to shoot and the woman who walked free became a legend. Some called it foolishness, others called it truth. Slowly, the ancient rites began to fade, replaced by new customs built on mutual choice and respect. The world was changing, one heart at a time, and at the center of that change was a single act of defiance. A lowered bow, a quiet refusal, a love unclaimed. When Rowan and Ilara finally returned to their village many seasons later, they found it transformed. The elders were gone, the old laws broken. Young lovers now chose each other freely, without trial or test. The people greeted them not with scorn, but with reverence, their eyes filled with awe for the man who had once been cast out. Rowan felt no pride, only gratitude. He had not set out to change the world, only to follow his heart. But sometimes a single act of truth becomes a spark that lights 1,000 others. Standing in the same square where the apple once rested, Rowan felt the weight of memory. Ilara stood beside him, her gaze steady, her spirit as wild as the day he first met her. In that moment he understood fully what he had always known deep inside, that love is not something earned by risk or proven by ritual. It is a choice, made freely, every day between two hearts that see and honor one another without chains.